You're all very welcome to the racing room. It's Ronan Groom here, back in the hot seat after a couple of weeks away, and I'm joined by the usual crew of Anthony Kaminskis, Harry Stewart Moore, and Tony Calvin. Gents, I hope you're well. We've lots to discuss this week, notably racing's big day in the city, reaction from that and what might come of it, and lots of stories after a mega weekend of racing on both sides of the Irish Sea, including the gift that keeps on giving in Kia Drabtrin, but probably not in the eyes of Rafe Beckett, I'd suggest. But first, AK, we're trying something new with horse racing on AK Bets this week. And I suppose it very much fits in with the general discussion we've had about the costs involved in taking bets on racing on this pod in months. We've been talking about it for months, I guess. But I'll let you explain what we're going to do. And yeah, you kick on there.
Yeah, we just put it out there this morning. We were talking about it last week, obviously. We've been talking just as a business, just in general, how we're gonna navigate some of the oncoming, Harry's favorite word, headwinds in the industry. And I think we're just gonna do that by gravitating more to as liquid markets as possible, and markets with as much pricing confidence as possible. I think UK Irish horse racing, we're probably one of the last up anyway at 9 a.m. on the day of race. Um, but even at that point, I just remember from my previous employment the analysis of early price bets on horse racing. I think I've mentioned it on the pod before, and you don't even get to break even to 11, half 11 in the morning. I think that number was from a trading perspective as well. It wasn't from an factoring in costs. We just did it from a trading perspective. So it's you're basically just cutting out some of the opportunities to bet into very, very low limit markets. And I think it's obviously not what we want to do longer term, or wouldn't be the ideal situation. You'd ideally want much more liquid markets much earlier in the morning and even the previous day, probably like was the case probably a while ago now. But when there's a lack of liquidity, I think as bookmakers, it'd be interesting the way it's taken by our customers in general, because we'll learn plenty from it. But I think even as bookmakers, you don't really want to be putting up too many markets that you don't have much pricing confidence in that aren't in any way mature. And I think when you do that, I think you do get frustrations from customers who maybe want to play into those markets and you're not confident in the prices. Um, and that can create friction. So I think we're just going to move that timeline a little bit more forward and a little bit more liquid. We were originally going to do it up until the start of the show, to be honest with you, and we probably ran back on that last minute just to midday, going up to the start of the show. So if you want to bet on the, I don't know what's on today, 8:20 at Kempton, you'd be betting at 7.50 for prices on our side. That's what we were originally going to do. But we've decided to do it from midday as a trial this week. We picked this week basically because there's a lot of low grade racing Monday to Friday. I think there's a listed race somewhere on Wednesday, and there's one listed race on Friday. And just looking at entries, I know I don't follow horse racing as closely as I once did, but I don't know any of the names. I don't think listed races resonate with people. I don't think the general population can distinguish between them and Class 6 handicappers. So just looked like the perfect week of really, really low quality racing across about 20 meetings, 25 meetings. And it was a good opportunity to try it and just to see what the impact will be, basically.
Indeed, we can. I guess we can reflect on it next Monday on the podcast to see how things go. But before we start and get into the racing review, we might just bring in a little bit on Jason Weaver here from ITV. A tweet from Ben Collins caught a bit of traction on X, where he's taken a video of a little clip from ITV Racing where Jason Weaver is talking about. He's asked about the Legends race and Luke Harvey's non-participation, and is trying to poke a bit of fun. I think we let you lads decide whether it's mistimed or not. But he said this is on Thursday at the Legends race. So he said Luke Harvey said the sniper shot him from about a furlong and a half down from the top of the roof in Doncaster, and he couldn't keep going then in relation to obviously he was getting tired in the race last year, I think is what he's insinuating there. So funny or distasteful was the title of the tweet Ben Collins put up. So I'll let you lads decide. How did you make of this, Tony, first innings?
Yeah, Dave Stewart. He emailed a late question last night and said, should he apologise? And the answer's no, really. I mean, I don't know Jason Weaver that well, but it's fully in the realms of possibility that he didn't know someone in America had been assassinated. Um, so yeah, I give him a pass from this. It was just amusing to see because Ed Champ, they were in a, he was in a group of four when he made that comment, and Ed Chamberlain, Kamani, and Mel Wenner just looked a bit aghast when he did it, and he waffled on for a bit after he said it. I don't know whether the producer said something in his ear, but no, it was just amusing. He meant nothing by it, and it wasn't deliberate. And even if it was deliberate, it was just a very unfunny joke, wasn't it? But yeah, no, he shouldn't apologise.
Yeah, totally agree. Totally agree with that. There's people, as far as my TV shows me, there's people getting sniped in various parts of the world at various ages indiscriminately over the last few months, and I don't think I know where my sympathies lie are those two sides of the pond, people being sniped in there. But yeah, it's just an unfortunate turn of phrase. You're gonna have to remove that phrase from the vocabulary if you can't say stuff like that. It wasn't as bad as the local radio reporter in Rochdale on GMR, Greater Manchester Radio. Rochdale played a game the weekend after 9/11, and the local reporter, who'd been the reporter for years and years, described somebody going over for a penalty as going down like the Twin Towers, and he was never
Oh
and
God.
and he was never seen again. So it wasn't that bad and that graphic, but yeah, I don't have any problem with it, to be honest with you. I think
Oh,
there's
That's a bad one.
that is a bad one.
I don't have any problem with Weaver anyway. So
No.
yeah, kick on, get over it, and
Yeah.
worse things going on, I
I
think.
think social media has led us into this area where everything is something to jump on and tell people off about and make them apologize for, and you just get disproportionate in responses to things. And the answer is it's just a minor embarrassment, which is just that's it. Just get over it and move on. He's not done anything for which he should be punished, and he's not done anything for which he should apologize.
Indeed, we shall move on then and kick on with the racing review. Tony, do you want to take us away? A busy one over the weekend with obviously Doncaster and the Irish Champions Festival.
Yeah, glasses on, notes at the ready. I'll fly through this. Um, Delacroix obviously won the Irish Champion Stakes under Christophe Soumillon. One of three winners on the day for the Aidan O'Brien Soumillon partnership. They also won with Diamond Necklace and Benvenuto Cellini, and those two are the actual new Oaks and Derby favourites respectively. So a very good Saturday for them. And Aidan O'Brien also won the Champagne Stakes for Puerto Rico. Talking about Delacroix and talking about early markets, there was a big, I think David Jennings put out a tweet saying that Delacroix was out to 4-1 in the morning. But it's just illustration of just how liquid these markets are in the mornings because I had a look at the liquidity on the race, and it took very little to knock that out to 4-1, and obviously it halved in price near the off. And these early markets are just phony wars, aren't they? Which is probably feeds into what Anthony was saying about the new AK Bets initiative. But
But it shows
yeah,
you if they're that weak on a race like that, what are they like on the bloody 420 at Plumpton?
well, I had a look, and there was one race that had just 1,600 quid done on it, and and bookmakers are still using those as some kind of guide. So
hmm.
if they're chasing it, if they're chasing a price out on the back of pennies, bookmakers, then they probably get all they deserve. But yeah, it's just illustrative of just how weak the early markets are. Carl Burke had a really good weekend. He had a double on the Saturday with Fallen Angel and the Matron Stakes and Convergent, and he had another big winner on Sunday. So Carl Burke had a great weekend in Ireland. Domestically here, Scandinavia won the Ledger under Tom Marquand, and he could be going to the Melbourne Cup if his scans are okay. That horse is tens with AK bets for the Australian race. And obviously, the Scandinavia Ledger win was it just highlighted how possibly poor the Derby form was this year, because Lambourne blew out again. We had a question on the race from Phil L on that. And he actually said how much shine and initial stud value has been shaved off after Lambourne's dual Derby win with his last 2 runs. Hats off for a busy campaign and attempting a new trip. It feels like perhaps he's never been off top of the charts at home before as well. I think most people were a bit dubious about the strength of the classic form at Epsom. And he's clearly not going to be a top ranker, isn't he? And we only have to go back to 2020 to when Serpentine won the Derby, and he ended up in Australia, and he's only won a Group 3 once in Australia since. So there's precedent there for Derby winners tailing off and not being as expensive and money bearers as they once were. And in America in the evening, notable speech won the Woodbine Mile, and he's off to Del Mar for the Breeders' Cup Mile. So that was Saturday. We'll fly through Sunday. 4 Group 1s on the Curragh card. Precise one for Aidan O'Brien and Roland Whelan. In the Moyglare, that one's now the 1,000 Guineas favourite. So it's all classic favourites for Aidan O'Brien once again. The Flying 5, Arizona Blaze, won that for Keir Jarabson and Adrian Murray. We'll do all that pre-race interview in the topics very shortly. A brilliant win for Eve Johnson Horton. Zavatiri just edged out Gustard or Stard in the National Stakes. I think most people viewed that as a heartwarming result. She's really, really good trainer, and she talks a good game as well. So great win for Eve there. Al Riffa is now favourite for the Melbourne Cup, top price 8s after winning the Irish Ledger very impressively. Not sure how deep the race was, but that ranges between 6 and 8s for the Melbourne Cup. And just one last race to flag up, because the winner is now 8s, between 8s and 10s for the Arc de Triomphe. There was a very strong Group 3 race at Longchamp, and it included the touted Japanese horse Croix de Nord, and that just edged the win there. So that's a single figure price for the Arc. So a high class weekend of racing, and I think I've just about got everything in there. So we'll move on.
Tony, just quickly, I might bring you in AK to ask you just about the Delacroix Drifter again, because obviously I was trading the race pretty closely for us on Saturday. Saw him go out, and I was just wondering, like, it's you say it's a soft markets thing. Is this just simply a case of the bigger players or the lads who want to have decent bets on Delacroix? Like, I was watching it thinking, I'm kind of like watching the drift and thinking, is there something wrong here? There's something coming out of the stable. And then in the back of my head, I'm thinking it's all, as you guys are saying, it's a soft market kind of phony war kind of thing in the morning. But surely, is someone not coming in there to take advantage of that, or is it just a case that they're waiting patiently because they can't get on at that point in the morning and just going to say, right, that price is amazing, but I'm going to hang back here until I think I can get a decent bet on this. Would that be the case there, AK?
I think the problem you have with I think the one of the with exchanges, like we said, they've obviously got unbelievably weak. I think it's telling that they're as weak as that in races of that stature. They also have quite a lot of power to see who is laying that. We can only see the front end of these sites. If you run an exchange, you can see the back end of that site, and knowing without understanding who is moving that market in that time, that's the key piece of information that as a front end user of an exchange you don't have, I suppose. As a front end user of an exchange, I'd love to see some of these races. One of the things, if I was still gambling full time, one of the things I'd be doing is looking at just the volatility of races more than obsessing over this horse went from 25 to 6. I'd be looking at, like, one of the metrics that I'd probably use is just take every horse in a race at best price over the trading life of that race. What was the over end of that race? And I'd be looking at how volatile these races are becoming. And if you were tracking that from 4 years ago and doing it month by month to now, if you were seeing a lot more volatility in the early period, if you were seeing races at best price bet to 90% 4 years ago, and now they're at 76%, I think it would mean that you can pay less heed to drifts in weak markets, essentially. But I don't know the answer to that. I assume that is the case. But I'd always love to see who is pulling the levers there, because, like you say, it's we don't have market manipulation really in horse racing or gambling, but it would be interesting to see whether accounts of that nature. We've seen it in some previous disciplinary hearings with the BHA. It'd just be interesting to see who is dragging those prices out and moving them one way, and whether they are entering the market or what accounts are entering the market, coming over the top. But I think one of the things bookmakers should understand, and I think they probably do understand, is they have lines to use as guides, but they are guides essentially. When they were liquid, they were a lot more than guides. Now they're probably guides, and I think it would be absolute certainty that bookmakers' field books have a lot more money in them now than exchanges, which might not have been the case once upon a time.
Just very quickly, because it's a topic all in itself. Do you really think the Flutter brands, for example, obviously Betfair being the major one, do you think the sportsbook odds compilers and trading teams have visibility of who's involved in the exchange market?
I know the answer to that question, or I did. There was
probably have to tread carefully here, because
probably have to.
I always assumed there was a separation there.
There is.
That may well be the case, but
I think it would be fair to say there was a time when, how can I put this without it being cut out? There was probably a time when there was a trial of not visibility, but like categories and things like that were made aware to trading teams, and that was just knocked on the head very quickly. They just decided they couldn't do it, basically. I don't know where the conversations take place. I'd imagine they don't. Well, when I was there, it was traded totally independently, basically, and there was a move to try and categorize certain things, but it was just knocked on the head very, very quickly, and they decided that the integrity of the exchange was paramount. So, without question. So, that's what I'd say there.
Right, interesting stuff. We'll start with the topics, lads, and we'll go to another tweet on our ex host, albeit one that was taken down fairly sharpish yesterday, that being Sunday. So this was an interview Kia Joorabchian was doing before the Flying Five Stakes, and it was the clip initially posted by Racing TV on X, and he was just being asked. I'm not sure, was it Gary O'Brien doing the interviewing in the parade ring, or someone else, but he was being asked a couple of things about Rafe Beckett, and he said we had a tough time there last year. We had a horse that was gelded by mistake by Beckett's yard. We couldn't quite work out how that one got gelded by mistake. We had Angelo Buonarroti, who you might recall was a very expensive purchase. So he said we had Angelo Buonarroti who got a cut and died, and then you got to me, got injured. Rafe came to me, and Rafe is Rafe, and he said, I think we should stop with you got to me now, because she's won the Irish Oaks and all that's happened since. And then he said, so we moved her over to Hadrian Murray. So this is quite explosive stuff from Kia Joorabchian. I wonder, are the lawyers going to be getting involved here, or how this is going to develop, or how Rafe Beckett's going to take this? Tony, do you want to kick in?
Yeah,
you spotted this first.
Yeah, obviously by the time a regular reader, Ian Mackey, a regular listener, viewer, he alerted me to it, and by the time I went to look at the clip, it got taken down by Racing TV. So perhaps someone complained, or the lawyers looked at it and think, no, that's quite a big allegation to make. Obviously, the main point there was that you know, how can you geld a horse by mistake? I would probably suggest he meant maybe the horse was gelded without his explicit permission, but we don't know. But even so, that's quite a startling, you know, kind of like revelation there. So, and it just underlines how difficult Kia must be to deal with. I mean, it reminds me of the line in kind of like with Nell and I, we've gone on holiday by mistake. I mean, gelding a horse by mistake, I would have thought is nigh on impossible. So I don't know what has happened there, but Racing TV took the clip down pretty quickly. And I imagine something that Rafe Beckett would have been particularly happy about. So whether or not it's actionable, um, Harry might have a better idea about the general theme of it, but it's just a very odd one, wasn't it? Very odd.
It's unusual to have people come out and say things like that in quite such a casual way in that kind of environment. I know there are a lot of people who really admire Keir for his straightforwardness, but I think sometimes ignoring the law, I'm not sure how fair that is as a way to reveal these things because Rafe Beckett's not there to defend himself. So I would not, I don't think that was particularly the right way to do it. It's also going to raise all sorts of issues with regulators and that kind of thing. We should say, of course, we've got absolutely no reason to believe any of this is true at the moment. But they're serious allegations. I think that there would, I'm not going to advise on it, obviously, and defamation is an extremely complex and nuanced area of the law. But yeah, I think that suggesting that trainers, geld the wrong horse or are capable of gelding the wrong horses is certainly in the realms of lowering that person's reputation in the sight of the man on the Clapham omnibus. So yeah, I can see why they took it down very quickly. The problem in this day and age is, of course, we've all seen it because it's going around, various other channels. It's been clipped up, and it's not. I just don't think that's the way to do these things at all. I'm not. I don't know either Keir or Rafe Beckett. I'm not being defensive of Rafe Beckett. I just think that. I think that a proper right of response when you're making allegations of that nature is pretty crucial.
I think Rafe was actually because he had a high profile runner later on in the card, Amalok. So I imagine Rafe might have been there. And there was some suggestions there was a Racing TV interview with him. I don't know whether it touched upon that. I wouldn't have thought it did, but
No.
he must have been absolutely livid at that.
But even then, I mean, he's not there to discuss that. He's being asked after the event. He doesn't know exactly what Keir had said. And it just, also, if those had happened, those serious things, shouldn't something have been done about it at like
Yeah,
when it happened? Why has it not been reported to the BHA?
yeah.
It all just seems rather odd.
And it's very unfair to, that Angelo Buonarroti was £1 million horse and, he got a cut and died. Now, why would you bring that up? I mean, the horse has had an injury and had to be put down. I mean,
And
presumably
he
that's nobody's fault. It's really unsavory, I thought.
It is, I mean, I can't remember the name of the sports fund that are investing in all this, but they must be quite interested in what
Apollo.
Apollo. They must be quite interested in what's been going on with their money as well. Listening to that, I mean, it's all just rather odd.
very on brand for Kia, I think, is the main takeaway. But we'll leave that there, and we'll reflect on racing's big day, I guess, up in the city, up in Westminster. Lots to take out of it, and keen to hear all your takeaways from it. But one of the kind of main points of it was a article you spotted on the iGaming Express website, Tony, which was Treasury calls for calm amidst the storm. So, in a public statement, the UK Treasury has attempted to de-escalate the situation, labelling this speculation around a tax hike as irresponsible. Dan Tomlinson, the Exchequer Secretary to the Treasury, emphasised that no final decision has been made and that the government's primary goal is to simplify the system, not necessarily to increase tax rates. Um, so is that the kind of have we reading this wrong the whole time that the government haven't actually been all for this big tax hikes and it's maybe been a bit of overreaction, or what did you take away from that? Tony, do you want to start?
Yeah, I only was alerted to the Treasury statement last week when Nick Luck said it on Luck on Sunday yesterday. Um, I read it as a slapdown of the BHA and this kind of like Wednesday at Westminster kind of action day. Yeah, I wouldn't have seen that as a positive at all for the sport, but so that was a very interesting development. As for the day itself, that's the only kind of like feedback we've had from the government on it. Well, official feedback anyway. Not sure how slick the day was. Not sure how well attended it was. Even depending who you speak to, there was between 6 and 20 MPs turned up throughout the day. That doesn't seem a massive attendance, but on the flip side of that, I was listening to various kind of like outlets in the morning. Good Morning Britain. It was all over that for the first hour of the program. They had someone at Lingfield, very on brand from the BHA's point of view about getting the point across. It would have helped that ITV Racing's Charlotte Hawkins was on that program, so presumably she'd been well teed up by the BHA, etc. So, and it got coverage on the BBC and Five Live and I think Radio 4 as well. So it got a lot of coverage. Whether or not that coverage end up being positive for the sport, I don't know. But yeah, it's I thought the Treasury statement was pretty damning towards the sport actually.
Mm.
I'm not sure. I'm not. Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure it was damning really, but I thought it was an odd statement. I don't quite know what prompted the government to feel the need to release a statement from a junior minister in the Treasury over that. And I suppose one way of looking at it, and I did try to look back yesterday at where this stuff about all the kind of theories of what the government's going to do have come from. It does at the moment appear to not be from anything particularly public. There's quite a lot of conjecture about what the government is going to do, and I suspect that we should be cynical about it because I think that things have probably been said behind closed doors about what the government's up to. It's a really odd statement to have made over a relatively small exercise, the strike. I think we got a question about whether we're allowed to call this a strike earlier. I'm going to call this a strike for current purposes. A relatively small strike. A whole lot of people up to London, quite possibly for the first time in their lives, going to College Green, marching around. And I'm not sure actually there wasn't any marching around. I think it was like a drinks party or something. I think, and then they sent out the poor jockeys looking like a sort of soul band in all white, wandering around College Green. And I think it's really weird. So one reading of it is they're going, "What are you all talking about? This is an administrative exercise in harmonization of tax throughout the entire tax code." And it's got nothing to do with this. Another is, well, maybe actually it's made the government feel slightly awkward, and so they're having to respond to it by saying, listen, actually, perhaps we're not going to do all the things that you are worried we're going to do. And then the other way is Tony's way, which is get lost, basically. But I'm not sure I do read it to get lost. I don't really understand why they felt the need to do it or what it was intended to achieve. Maybe it was in response to being chased by countless racing journalists driving them mad. And just going, who are these people? Why are they bothered? We've got a whole tax code to re-draft here, and we're getting these guys constantly asking us about what we're doing with horse racing. Perhaps they released it in response to that, but I don't think it tells us a great deal, I suppose.
Yeah, I think it's probably two interesting points for me, or just 2 points for me. Just any increase in tax on bookmakers is probably going to be felt by horse racing first. That's the thing that I just want everyone to remember. That's what I think is going to happen. And then the second interesting thing for me was Lord Allen's voice was
Yeah.
He didn't have the voice I was expecting him to have, but
What were you expecting, Darth Vader?
I don't know. I was expecting
It's more of a squeaky toy than Darth Vader, isn't it?
Yeah,
Well,
I
just
don't know.
shows you how far you can get with a squeaky voice because he's done very well.
Yeah,
Agree,
so it's
agree.
it's
Let me just jump in there, lads, and I'll set that up here because that was an interesting interview, and I'd say a lot of people, and me included, listening to Lord Allen for the first time or seeing him do any sort of interview since this whole kind of the standoff started before he took the job. So he was asked a couple of things, talked about racing, standing as a unit during the week, shoulder to shoulder. Said that the proposed racing tax would be a cheap win for the government if they're wanting to appease the general public. Obviously, earmarked the black market as an area of concern. Matt Chapman asked him why he wanted to do the job with little experience in sport, and he said he'd never been in a TV studio before. Then he created ITV. He's really excited about the challenge. Everyone said they wanted to change, so he likes to think that he has the support of the BHA board. And asked about like that kind of period where he didn't take up the job, he just said he needed to confirm that he had the mandate. That's what he got. And then he was asked about Brad Dunchy, who's he said did incredibly well. This is in regard to a BHA chief exec position, and he said, "But we need to look at commercial opportunities. It's a very different job as it wasn't as it was in the past. But we're a regulator now. We need to be a commercial leader." So, AK, I know you're interested in his voice there, but did you have any general takeaways of that piece that he did, Lord Allen? And is he what you expected from what you read it over the last few months?
Yeah, just the commercial aspect, it just made me laugh, to be honest with you. I think horse racing has tried over various years to get outside partners, and it's the interest from brands not involved in sport and betting has continued to dwindle, be it just a couple of rich fellas sponsoring Gold Cups and Grand Nationals, and like there's no the days of brand you can buy on the high street being interested in sponsoring horse races. It's just, I think it's just over. I think it's over. It's about understanding where. I think it's just about understanding where your income comes from, and you can. We've seen different things. We've seen jockey clubs do deals with player tech for casino software. Like we've seen. I think there's just an absolute mishmash of ideas and thoughts, and I think just it's all going to come. It's all going to eventually come back to the people you make money from out of this, and you can grow the sport with, and it's it might annoy some, but that's bookmakers, I think.
The only other point I've got to make on it is all this stuff about, racing presented a united front. Now, the BGC statement said they were disappointed that the event on Wednesday took place, and we all know how miffed bookmakers were that not being involved in the decision protest to run that Westminster Day on Wednesday. So I think this united front statement is just a complete nonsense. I mean, the most important constituent of racing and betting are bookmakers because they're the conduit by which the sport is allowed to
I think
operate
I
and
think I
run.
think it's punters, to be honest with you. I
It's
think
losing
punters and
punters.
then yeah, it's punters. Yeah, it is
There's losing
essentially.
punters.
It is,
Yes.
yeah.
That's what we could have done. We could have had a losers march, just had
Yeah,
loads of losing punters turn up to Westminster saying we fund the sport.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's not. Yeah, it's
Could have had
also.
Matt Zarb could have stood there with an iPad trying to get them to sign up to get them stuff as they walk past.
Yeah.
It was. Listen. I think it was. I think that they should definitely have tried to bring in some bookmaking interest into that. It was obviously going to be difficult because I don't think bookmakers really agreed with the way they were going about it. Um, and I do think that they were very clear on it being anti-harmonize in public statements. It was all about anti-harmonization. We don't want harmonization, and that I think bookmakers don't particularly object to. That as a principle, that you don't want taxation to be the same on horse racing products as they are as casino products. I think most bookmakers don't object to that, but there is definitely a sense that, particularly because of the bedfellows that they have chosen in people like Matt Larcobb and Cousin, there is definitely a sense, and I think it's a reasonable sense, that horse racing has essentially jumped over the wall and is basically now playing alongside the opponents. And I think that if racing was more sensible, it would have tried to do this without the involvement of people who, we call them the antis. And I think that has left a very bitter taste and makes doing this on a unified basis more or less impossible.
Yeah. I was just disappointed that Lee Anderson wasn't helicoptered into Parliament Square.
Yeah,
Yeah, that would have got the headlines, wouldn't it?
yeah.
Indeed. We'll move it on because we have loads of questions later. Like, I'm conscious that we'll move on to our next topic, which I should title "Mayhem in Society." So, billionaire John Caldwell has called on Chancellor Richard to impose a new tax on online gambling because it leads to mayhem in society. This is an article in the Financial Times over the last week. So, Caldwell is of Phones for You fame. He sold that company for 1.5 billion, and he was speaking in his Mayfair mansion, saying online gambling is causing mayhem in society because people just get through on the mobile phone and they're all there all day gambling the family's money away. My whole philosophy is to do what's best for society and tax those people that are not the best for society. Let's disregard what they don't want. An online gambling tax could raise up to 5 billion. Um, he also, in the same article, went on to say that there should be a carbohydrate tax, which would be designed to drive people towards kale, spinach, cabbage, and
Are you
healthy
making this up?
vegetables.
Are you
No,
actually
he
No,
making
did.
is
he-
this
I
real?
could
Is it?
not believe what I was reading.
Yeah.
I thought it was a wind up as I read it. It was something else.
Should be a tax on fucking idiots, is what there should be.
I tell you, it's a really interesting. I have a theory that people who are able to be extremely gifted entrepreneurs and make tons of money, it's very often actually not an intelligence that allows them to do that, or it's a very narrow type of intelligence, which basically means they block out in everything else. They just don't have a clue about what's going on in the world, and but have enormous self-confidence because, of course, the one thing they have really tried out has gone really well. I think that was just a huge example of that. I mean, to spout forth in the way he did in that article with, I mean, it was, I mean, I think Alan Partridge would have balked at some of the stuff said in that article, honestly.
The worrying thing was, I mean, like I say, when I read it, I thought we'd have to discuss it because, like I said, it is just for the comedic value alone. But I mean, this is a guy who must be a very big donor
Yes.
to the Labour Party.
Yeah. Having been a Tory, I think.
Yeah, I mean, he
Yeah.
actually gave 500 grand to
Boris
Boris
Johnson.
Johnson, and that is not, as these things go. I gather that's quite punchy. So
Yeah,
presumably,
it is. Yeah.
if he's giving a similar amount,
Pays
to
for at least a
guy,
wall of wallpapering in the
yeah,
flat. Yeah.
and he's getting one-on-ones with Starmer and Tony Blair. He must be taken pretty seriously, and if he's coming out,
Yeah, but I mean, imagine having
don't
to sit
think
next
that.
to him for £500,000 sitting next to someone trying to make you eat kale. I think
I know,
I think
but
I think I'd struggle.
if he's flapping around that kind of money, he will be listened to, and it sounds like he's at one with Gordon Brown on this as well, doesn't he? About parroting the £5 billion line, and I mean, he sounds like he wants to tax everything. This guy, he's going after cigarettes,
I think there was something in there about
alcohol.
he's very pro bicycling as well. I think so. He's really ticked off all the boxes
Yeah, he's
that are going to drive Mr. White Van Man completely
got the
insane.
got the Jeremy Vine fan club after behind him as well.
Yeah.
Very dangerous man.
It's just so easy to not gambling if you don't, if you don't know the first thing about it, and
Yeah.
that's the dangerous world that we now live in. Is that, and yeah, I don't want to go on about it, but why positive arguments are also important, and that gambling's. I was thinking about this because, of course, arguably the most successful person in gambling is a complete recluse underneath codes. It is part of the sort of way that gambling operates. It doesn't really like coming out into the sunlight. You see Lord Lucan more often, frankly, and I just think that it is, you've got all these loony voices around. Some of them are loony, and some of them have reasoned arguments about their concerns with gambling, but some of them are just knee jerk. That guy was saying he wants no tax on entrepreneurialism, basically, because, well, surprise, surprise, he that's how he made his money. And so therefore go after people who like having a bet. But he doesn't know the first thing about the black market. He doesn't know the first thing about the funding of horse racing, for example, and the jobs that it keeps going. Know the first thing about the jobs it keeps going within the industry itself. But no one is making those positive arguments. And so I think we're in a very dangerous territory where basically there is only bad news about gambling, really.
Fred Dunn's really the only one who's ever gets front and center, and with his Manchester drawl. I'm
Well,
gonna
he
push
sponsored
this
all five
price
classics as well,
from
isn't he, Michelle?
7-4 to 5-2 for the next.
We'll move on, gents. We'll go to a couple of little or smaller stories, but a bit more serious, I guess. In this case, with there was a man arrested by Great Manchester Police over allegations of race fixing. So, a 42-year-old man was arrested on Friday as part of a joint investigation by Greater Manchester Police and the Gambling Commission in connection with allegations of race fixing. The man who was arrested in the Hackshot area of Bury, is alleged to have committed offences under Section 42 of the Gambling Act 2005. According to the Gambling Commission, the investigation was launched following reports of suspicious betting activity linked to races earlier this year. So the BHA declined to comment on this, given its surrounding investigation. And Section 42 of the Gambling Act states that it is an offence for someone to cheat at gambling or do anything for the purpose of enabling or assisting another person to cheat at gambling. And anyone found guilty could find a custodial sentence of up to 2 years. So, sorry, Harry, I'm going to throw it to you with obviously very little detail to comment on
Yeah.
what might actually arise out of this, but I'm very serious for the person involved, I'd suggest. Yeah.
It is, and I think that it's interesting. It's the second high-profile one after the politicians who are also being sorry, the politician and the others who are being have been charged with cheating under the Gambling Act in respect to the election dates. The Gambling Commission are definitely getting more assertive in the way that they go after people who they think are involved. This is ripe for complications because of the involvement of two regulators and presumably also the Crown Prosecution Service. So you've got the BHA will have to help the Gambling Commission with the racing side of it. The Gambling Commission are a statutory body and have much wider powers. The BHA have basically the powers of the BHA are ultimately to stop you coming on a race course. And so it'll be an interesting dynamic, I think, between the three of them. The BHA are inclined to try sometimes and get involved in criminal investigations where they are not particularly welcome by any party to those investigations. But this one, they will be very welcome, I suspect, because the Gambling Commission are not going to want, I suspect they're going to have to be looking at race footage. They're not even going to understand the lingo, that was one of the huge problems of the litigation at the sort of involving Kieran Fallon and those guys many years ago when the police charged them was that the City of London police just didn't have the first clue what they were talking about. He was asked about one ride, famously, why why isn't that horse going faster? And he said, well, I'm doing everything I can. They went, why aren't you hitting it harder? And that was the question asked by the police. So they will rely very heavily on the BHA, I suspect, in this, and it'll be very interesting to see how it plays out. There are quite a lot of rumours about who the person is circulating around the internet, but we don't, other than that, have anything to go on as to what's going on here.
Okay, and you might be able to reflect a bit more about the ins and outs of this case, Harry, which is in relation to the failed appeal against a 10-day ban for Alec Wojcicki.
Yeah.
Is one of the five riders who you might recall we chatted about with the Windsor
Yes.
fixture last year, where five horses had raced on, basically more or less disregarding a flag. So I'll just read this out to summarize and let you come in, Harry. So leading apprentice jockey Alec Wojcicki has lost his appeal against 10-day suspension for failing to stop after a false start in a chaotic Windsor race on August 18th. Despite arguing he hadn't seen or heard the warning signals, the disciplinary panel accepted that he might not have noticed the flag or whistle, but ruled that he reasonably should have, given the 9-second warning window. So with this, I presume this was going to be a difficult one for him to appeal or to win the appeal, Harry. Or what did you think of it?
I suspect so, because I don't think the other four did appeal, did they? So that I suppose that tells you something. Couple of things. The first thing is, I looked last night and the written reasons aren't up yet, so I'm going very much on the news report of it. Um, I think that one of the bits of evidence against him was that, well, the starter could see the flag and hear the whistle. I think that's not a brilliant bit of reasoning if that's a main one, because of course the starter is not surrounded by racing horses breathing and smacking their hooves against the turf
With
and
what
going at
also?
30, 35 miles an hour and is behind them. It's an odd one. I think I accept. I think finding that they accept that he didn't see the flag, but he should have done. It strikes me that the quite an obvious question there is maybe the problem is the system that they use
Yeah.
as to what to do in these circumstances. I mean, we're in 20 whatever we are in now, 2025, and we're dealing with things with a man waving a flag and blowing a
Blowing
whistle.
a whistle.
Arguably, it's quite nice that racing doesn't go down sort of massive screens on the side of the course telling or communicating with jockeys as they go down. But equally, it is a man with a whistle and a flag. And I also think that it's one where sometimes a criticism that can be made of the setup of the judicial panel is there aren't enough ex-jockeys on it. It strikes me that an ex-jockey, an experienced ex-jockey, proper one, not someone who rode as an amateur 10 times when they were 18, would very quickly be able to tell you whether those jockeys were trying it on or not.
A proper one. Love it. Get a bloody traffic light system that's just red
Yeah.
and fucking green.
That's
And
what they do in
stop
France,
this
isn't it?
nonsense.
Apparently.
Yeah.
But it's 10 days for that. It just seems totally disproportionate. And they
I think
accept
once they found him guilty, they didn't have much of an option. That's the rule. The rule is the rule, as they say. Yeah.
it, but they did say in there they might look at the actual length of sentence going forward, because if you're getting the thick end of 2 weeks off
Mm,
for something they acknowledge he didn't hear and he didn't
mm,
see,
mm.
it just seems bang wrong, doesn't it?
Yeah, and they're junior. He's a very good jockey, but they're all very junior. I think that possibly should have been taken into account as well. And it's not really a health and safety. It's not really a welfare, health and safety issue either. So again, I'm just not sure why it needs. Obviously you need some kind of deterrent from people doing things to win races. But what's the motivation to carry on riding a race if you think it's been abandoned? Full started.
Indeed.
Pretty costly, I think, for the lad. I think maybe that's the reason he did appeal. He's quite high up in the Apprentice race
Yeah,
to be
yeah.
champion apprentice. So maybe that was the reason he decided it was worth having a go. Before we get into questions, one last point, and it's I guess the point we talked about a lot before, the cost of going racing. So Thomas Hogg was at Doncaster on Friday and posted a picture of pint that I haven't seen the picture. Tony's notes here tell me that the pint was rather unappealing looking, and went on to comment, said the total cost for the day up to now £326 for a couple. It's hard to compare, but we just booked 3 nights in Prague, flights and hotel for £300. The customer experience was okay. The quality of food and drink was poor. When I say this was the best pint I got, obviously referring to his picture. I've paid it, but that's because I love horse racing. But if you're a normal person looking at that cost and weighing up 5 hours at Donny Racecourse or a long weekend away, it's an absolute no-brainer. This is right now the main barrier to horse racing and new audiences. So, AK, you've been banging this drum for a long time, and that's pretty stark there. Even that the cost for two people to go racing there, it's mad. I didn't think it was that big.
Yeah, I think it's just for me, it's the same as it's the same argument I make all the time regarding even Cheltenham and the festival. There's just a better option there. That it's not even about. We said it with whatever it was called, Project Beacon or something like that. They'd listed everything apart from the bloody cost of the whole day, which is I think I said it was number one, two, and three. That's the reason less people are going and less people are interested, and more people who do go are pissed off with what they get when they do go. It's just the cost of the day for what they get. But the biggest part of it for me is there's just alternatives there's just far better alternatives for the spend. in various other, not even sport, anything. It's just unbelievably expensive for pretty poor.
It's really interesting where they're marketing racing at the moment. I've been listening to this I think I mentioned it, this podcast with Richard Osman and Marina Hyde. It's completely sponsored by the Going is Good campaign. I went to the Chiswick Picture House, the Pontius Picture House in London, because it was the last place showing that Tim Key film. And again, that was the only time I've seen the Going is Good campaign. So racing is obviously trying to get a sort of very middle class crowd in, and it's obviously making a concerted effort along. And it must be to do, frankly, with the fact that they think they've got more money to spend, because those sums. It has to be said that everything is expensive. Going out at all is expensive, but those sums are prohibitive for what is in effect standing around watching races from a distance.
Did you say the Going is Good sponsor that podcast?
Yeah, and they
That
do
would
that
not-
thing that they do in podcasts where they talk about it, and Marina Hyde talks about how she likes going racing, and it's properly it. I think it might. It's one of the main sponsors of that podcast is the Going is Good campaign.
That would not have been cheap with those two involved.
No, it won't. I think it's one of the top podcasts in the. I've only just started listening to it, but it's all over it.
Podcast sponsorship.
Yeah, not always worth it, is it?
It's, yeah.
We'll move on swiftly. Question time, lads, and we'll go quick fire here because we're a bit tight on time and we do have a lot of questions. Thanks everyone for indeed sending in your questions. It's a nice part of the show. So Coach is asking, I'd love to know AK's thoughts on prediction markets such as Polymarket and Kalshi in the US that are eating into established sportsbooks with millions of volume on a single EPL game. Doubt the current rules and regulations make it worth trying in UK and Ireland, but it's interesting.
Yeah, definitely. I don't know how they calculate the volume, like different exchanges over here. If you have a bet on one exchange versus another, they'll calculate it differently. So I don't know how they actually, I don't know what the formula is that they calculate the volume. I had a look at Polymarket. They had a market for the Irish president market, and it was saying that there's 7 figures matched on the market, and it was saying there was 7 figures matched on Conor McGregor. Now, I just don't believe that. I don't know if that's somebody having, I don't know, 5 grand at 500 to 1 or something like that. I don't know. There's, I don't know what the calculation is there, but I just couldn't believe that. So I take some of it with a pinch of salt. Whenever I've been on any of those sites, I think they don't have many markets. I think the last time I checked Polymarket was probably 4 months ago, and they had about 50 markets, and 45 of them had looked like the 220 at Stratford, and 5 of them had absolute fortunes matched on them. So it's kind of. I also read a very, very good article by a guy that said he won a couple of $100,000 betting on the next Pope on there, and he'd done a lot of. He wrote an article on it after, which was quite an interesting read. So there are markets, there are liquidity. I don't know how much they're eating into sportsbooks turnover at present, but it is probably quite interesting that the FanDuels and the DraftKings are looking at this stuff and trying to. From what I saw, I can't think of the specific, but I think it might have been DraftKings were looking at doing something themselves in that space as well. So it's obviously on the radar as a it's still slightly novelty. It has obviously options to expand and stuff, but to be honest with you, I don't know enough about it to give a real concise opinion. But it's a long way to go for market depth anyway.
Interesting development nonetheless. Dave is asking regarding Jockey's club. The Jockey Club's deal with Playtech, this seems to have been continuously brushed under the rug. It's not a good look when racing seeks to detach itself from games of chance taxation. Tony.
Yeah, I had a look into it. He actually clipped up a link to a Guardian article from Monday, the 11th of April, 2022. When I'll read from my notes here, the Jockey Club did a deal with Playtech to allow rapid play gaming products using events like Cheltenham Festival and Grand National, which have image rights to. Now, I'm not sure if that is still in place, but at the time, I remember there was a lot of kind of like talk about this. And it was and like Gredwood wrote this article, and I'll just call up a, a section of it which is very prescient in the current climate, and it reads, this is Greg in April 2022, so he saw what was coming down the line. He wrote, at some point in the not too distant future, a hard rains are gonna fall. The vital issue for racing is how much of it will fall specifically on gaming, which is acknowledged to have much higher problem gambling rates than betting, and how much drenches everything else. The most sensible plan is for racing to be standing as far away from gaming as possible when the heavens open. The Jockey Club's playtech deal is more akin to standing under the tallest tree around when it feels as if there's thunder in the air. So, yeah. So if that, I'm not sure if that deal is still in place, but very good stuff from Greg there 3 or so years ago.
Yeah. Stuart Acaster, although some actually changed the wording on tweets, etc., later in the day, should racing have been allowed to call Wednesday's day off a strike when it was actually a postponement of fixtures? Plenty in the more mainstream media ran stories saying meetings had been cancelled. Harry, do you want to come in there?
I just think that whenever the mainstream media gets onto racing news, it doesn't research it terribly closely or carefully and gets things wrong. I think that's just another example. I'm not sure it's a hugely interesting part of the story for them, someone who has no interest in racing is just reading the news that racing hasn't in fact cancelled them. It's rescheduling whatever it was for a Monday, whatever, I can't remember what the meetings were now, for a Monday evening. I wouldn't say that's headline stuff. The story was that racing was making a stink, basically, wasn't it? And that was the sort of sting of the story. And I think that they've had some success in getting it into the mainstream media. What that success will then achieve, God only knows, frankly.
Presumably, it was a good thing that for racing that the mainstream media probably overplayed it a bit and sounded
Yeah.
like it was a bit more. So,
Yeah, I
yeah,
mean,
Jock,
I don't think there probably is a legal term for the word strike because I think it has been legislated over for probably the Trades Unions Act, that kind of thing. But I don't really think that you can blame journalists for using that as a sort of general term for what happened on Wednesday.
Sounds better than the racing temporary postponement, doesn't it? I suppose.
Actually,
Yeah. The
yeah.
photos that they did at the time were all had cancelled written all over it, which is so they were at one point it was looking like the cancellation of racing, which bears very different meanings nowadays. So I'm not sure that was not sure that was the right way to do it.
Neil Monroe's asking, I was wondering if AK Betts is a member of the BGC. If so or not, why? I know some smaller operators who feel it's just a mouthpiece for the tier one operators and no benefit to remote or non-remote small operators. AK.
Yeah, we weren't for the first 2 and a bit years. After we got the license, we went live on our UK license at the start of July. Don't know the exact date, but we signed up and became a member of the BGC. Maybe the start of August, roughly around the start of August, so maybe 6 weeks ago, somewhere in and around that period. It is obviously it's probably dominated by tier one operators, probably as it should be, because they can probably provide a lot more insight into some stuff than smaller operators can. I think there's about 100 members. I think we were roughly around about the 100th member, so there's roughly 100 members. And yeah, for me personally, it's opened my eyes to a few things, to be honest with you. But for me, it was just from how can you put it? I don't think I'm going to have any influence in absolutely anything that goes out from the BGC, but I think it's more from a how would you say it? Maybe a downside protection thing in certain areas, having the backing of the BGC, and it's really handy for certain things like really boring stuff to maybe people listening to this podcast, but like compliance stuff coming down the line and just making sure you're crossing your T's and dotting your I's and stuff like that. It's probably worth it for us in that regard to stay not ahead of the curve, but on the curve, maybe, I don't know. With some of the more admin type stuff of having your own license, basically.
Alan Bryant's asked or is saying Harry said last week that he felt the bloodstock industry should contribute more to prize money. How does he think this should be done? Levy, is he aware that the industry, open bracket sales companies, studs, EBF, etc., contribute 15 to 20 million a year in sponsorship and bonuses? Does he think that other industries that make money from supplying a service to racing, like feed companies, broadcasters, farriers, etc., should be levied? Harry, so you've been taking the task on comments there last week.
Yeah, I've obviously annoyed someone in a gilet. I don't know. So I don't know. I don't think you can compare bloodstock agents to farriers in terms of the service they provide for racing. I think obviously it is an important part of racing, the bloodstock industry. But I'm not sure that it's exactly the same industry as horse racing, as I've said before. I think it exists separately from it, and I think the money that swashes around in it doesn't really touch horse racing very often. I think that around 500 million goes through the ring in a year. I think the European breeders, or whatever they're called, that their actual direct, and I'm only talking about their direct contribution, is a couple of million a year. Yes, there are definitely sponsorships and things like that, but I just think that when you look at, for example, bookmakers via race courses and owners, they contribute around, I think if prize money is about 190 million, I think they contribute about 120, 130 between them to it. And I think that it is odd because, as I've said before, the value of bloodstock is based ultimately on the horses being able to race. And yet racing doesn't appear to me to get very much money from bloodstock. And I perfectly accept that a lot of people in the bloodstock industry and doing this at lower levels where they're not making tons of money. I completely get that. And I'm not saying that they should all be taxed by this, but there is something a bit odd about the vast sums that are being spent on horses at the top end, when the sport itself doesn't appear to have any money. I just think that's as to the mechanics of it, I don't know. You could perhaps put, tariffs on. You could say that when you put them through the ring that you have to make a certain contribution, that kind of thing, over certain values. There would be all sorts of reasons, I'm sure, why people will say that this is impossible. But that is the story of this game at the moment: is that everyone accepts there needs to be more money as long as it's not theirs.
On the because I know you found this funny, Tony, so I might just quickly bring in Johnny Deneen's comments on bloodstock agents in here. So he was writing his column in the Racing Post. And just a quick excerpt from it here. So he said, I'm not a huge fan of bloodstock agents, apart from the odd exception. And when I hear these guys saying, we bought this one and he's going to such a trainer, and we bought another and he's going somewhere else, I can't stop myself from screaming at the telly, you bought nothing because it's not out of your pocket. And if you're offered a 50% share for 5% cost, you wouldn't even take it. It's very easy for most of these so-called extras to be extravagant with other people's money, and you know full well if they were spending their own cash, then they'd be much less conspicuous at the sales. What do you think, Tony?
I just read it and I just thought it was very amusing. I mean, I take a very big price about Johnny writing his own copy. I imagined when DJ transcribed that, he had to take out a few choice swear words. I'd be buying fuck and fucking it about 20 there. But yeah, I just thought, I think he just he speaks for nearly everybody who actually comments upon this, if privately, if not publicly. It's just absolutely bizarre. Bloodstock agents operate and how they operate. I mean, there's no kind of, you can't, it's not like you can go to a website and call up how successful they are and how much they've spent and how much, they've got returns on their investments for their clients. Yeah, I just thought it was very amusing. And
if it was ever positive, if the returns were positive, they'd be telling you and documenting it themselves. It's the fact that doesn't happen is interesting. It's like I totally agree with everything he said. For me, it's like poker players. When you go onto some poker website and you look at a poker player, lifetime winnings $1.2 million. I'm like, where's the fucking losses there? Knows what your lifetime non-cashes are. Like, just absolute nonsense stats. It's the same type of theory, but he's dead right. Like, it's very easy to spend other people's money and take 5% of it for yourself.
Yeah.
It's all emperor. I just think they're obviously, and I don't know enough about it, but there's obviously guys that are good at what they do in every discipline. But it's just one of them industries. I just think it's real emperor's new clothes. It's about churning clients and fucking convincing people to spend money. That's the fucking game. It's not about. I think that's
And everyone's at it. Everyone you meet anywhere
Trainers,
near racing,
everything.
it's like, oh yeah,
Yeah.
I'm a bloodstock agent. You know, lots of kids in their 20s saying I'm bloodstock agents. Yeah. There are
And
I
everyone
think the
knows.
answer is there are bloodstock agents and there are bloodstock agents is what I'm saying.
And I think everyone would probably agree. All the best deals are done privately, a la Harold Kirk and Mullins, etc. But yeah, it's a spoofer's paradise, isn't it?
Yeah.
In the main, I would have thought.
Definitely.
Yeah. Deneen on Deneen's whoever Ghost made probably is DJ, isn't it? But I'd say he's an absolute dream to Ghost because the best articles I find are the ones that you can actually hear the person's voice in it, and you can.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Although I couldn't do his accent there, but I tried to play it off the best I could. Stabilize asking crowds and turnover at Leopardstown and how the box experience went for us. AK, how did any insight here?
I don't really. I turned up at Leopardstown for about. I was there for about an hour on Saturday, just with my kids, prancing around and getting ice creams and this kind of thing, and just seeing how we were getting on. Basically, I think the bet was fairly quiet. We did quite a lot of turnover on the away meetings actually at Leopardstown, which was unusual. I think we took more money on meetings not at Leopardstown than we did at Leopardstown on Saturday, which was interesting. Couple of decent bets flying around. The Curragh was probably the opposite of that. Not many aways, but there was decent enough turnover. It was okay. I think the weather wasn't probably great at the Curragh again. Seemed to have pissed off someone up in the sky. I think the Curragh for the old weather. But yeah, Leopardstown, it was busy. I just don't think there weren't that many lumpy bets knocking around. I think it's really interesting as well. Whenever I go, you bump into some amount of English lads coming over and chatting and stuff like that. It seems to be a real. We had a few more tickets for the box and come in and stuff like that. And I met Dave in the Clayton Hotel for a coffee just before racing, about 11 o'clock in the morning. We had 5 spare tickets, big group of English lads over, just giving the rest of the tickets. It seems to be a real thing that people just. They're not going racing in England. More and more people are coming over to Ireland just to. I think that's when you're talking the Prague example for the Doncaster guy. I think people are maybe part of it is people coming racing in Ireland a little bit more for some of the bigger meetings as well. It's something we're seeing more and more of. But yeah, it went well. We didn't host the box, to be honest with you. It was a ticket and go and use the box if you like. But it was just it was a room essentially with a nice view and. Yeah, and I think the people who got the tickets seem to appreciate it.
I'm not sure you can liken it to Prague now. They had 2 nights in Dublin and flights over there for £300. AK, as you well attested, but
I think you'd have to
it's
swim over. I
interesting.
think, yeah.
Yeah.
I've never been to Prague. Is it all right?
No, I've never been.
My brother lives there. I was only there for his stag, but my brother moved there recently enough and seems to be enjoying it, loving it.
Yes, crowds, just to quickly mention, crowds were up at Leopardstown, decent amount, around 9 to 10%, and just slightly down at the Curragh. For anyone's interested,
They're up at Donny as well on Saturday. 26,000 plus, yeah.
My missus did actually point out to me that she'd seen Leopardstown on Instagram. So whoever's doing the Leopardstown socials had infiltrated the missus's feed there, and she was like, "Oh, I didn't realise there was loads of girls dressed up at Leopardstown."
As your man Greg O'Shea, your man, the Love Island fella that we won Love Island a few years ago, so he's probably
He always gets weird
probably
out for
reached a
these.
new
He's Frankie Foster, isn't he?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I Love Tipsters asks, what are AK's honest thoughts on British betting rings? The bookmakers are always talking about the value, about 150 odds and handicaps, all using the tracker and reluctant to take a decent bet. Comparing their odds to the industry, SP is meaningless. Shark's story doesn't surprise me. That was Shark on Look on Sunday last week.
What do I think? I'd much prefer 50 odds in 16 runner handicaps in Irish rings, because one thing it does allow you to do is it allows you to go bigger prices, which is what we tend to do. It suits us better, rather than being overbroken in place markets and stuff like that, which nobody understands anyway on the track, bar the handful of people. Yeah, I think you just pick your bookmaker, don't you? Like if I can name in the Irish ring 20 bookmakers that'll lay you a bet to win 5-10 grand. So it's yeah, like if you're walking up to some fellow on the third row that's just got out of his 2003 Passat, like you pick and choose your people, I suppose. If someone doesn't work for you, just move to somebody else. Like it's you've plenty of options there. I think the Irish ring is stronger from what I've seen. Like we were bouncing around at Cheltenham, asking for each way bets in the Gold Cup and stuff like that, and we were getting knocked back in the betting rings at Cheltenham. So it's you just wouldn't get if you went up if the Gold Cup the English Gold Cup was at fucking Punchestown with the exact same runners and the exact same race shape, and you walked up to someone asking for a monkey each way at 15-2, you wouldn't get knocked back. There's absolutely no chance you'd get knocked back. But that was happening to us in the UK. But it'll be the same as anything. You'll have the UK bookmakers. I don't want to denounce UK bookmakers now, but you'll have bookmakers that'll lay massive bets, I'd say. Sure, we all know one of them. So it's I don't know. I can't remember the last time I was not back in an Irish betting ring myself. And we went to Windsor. Was it Windsor the night before Cheltenham? And I asked for one bet, 250 quid each way, and just got offered win only, I think. And another person said no to one of my bets. And I'd never been to Windsor in my life, didn't know who they were. So yeah, I think people do get knocked back, but yeah, have a look at the bookmakers trying to lay bets and in the ring, and just stick with them.
I had a second question from that account. We maybe come back to next week. A question on SP. Just move it along. Johnny Two is asking, why would AK buy a pitch to Kerr after slagging it off at every opportunity on the pod? Either it's a good pitch and you make money, in which case why complain, or it's a shithole. It can't be both.
As Mick McCarthy said, it can. Yeah, just I'm very. It's about value for me. It's about value. It's the same theory as what if I think a horse is 25-1 to win and I can get 33-1. Do I think it's going to win? No. Or is it likely to win? No. Is it all like is the value? Yes. I'll bet it's the same. Just same theory as anything. If I think something is underpriced and I can make a case for it, I'll usually buy it.
Yeah. Simple as that. Richard Thomas asking, is the Racing Post no longer fit for purpose as a credible publication for a race analysis? Exhibit A, comments on the Woodbine Mile. These comments would make me wonder whether they were AI generated. A parochial point, but indicative of the direction of travel. He's asking Tony.
I think that's harsh. I think in that instance, they probably were computer generated. When I was doing the Betfair podcast a couple of years ago, and we were just waiting for prices to come through, the all-weather prices came through pretty much instantaneously, and I was told that they were computer generated. I'm not sure if that's true or not. So I think that's just the way the industry is going, whether it be bookmakers, editorially, or whatever. And I think probably it's going to be going to see more of it. But yeah, I think that was just an isolated incident. So I think they are manually done in the main, but it was probably just a American racing in the evening, and if they can auto generate it, they will do.
What's your angles asking? This weekend was a great weekend of top class racing, but surely there's too much racing to analyze effectively for any enthusiast. I might take that and I'd say I'm all for these big weekends where it's all action on both sides. I'll take a few quiet weekends if that means that we get a big weekend this and everyone gets stuck in. David Brown is asking, is the going now decided by stopwatch star sign or the clerk's Labrador. Champagne Stakes is called Good, while Park Stakes Blitz time form standard. For punters placing serious bets, accurate going is key. Is it time racing? Ditched guesswork and tried science, possibly, Tony.
This is a common complaint, isn't it, about goings not being accurate. It all depends what clerk of the course you get and how honest they are. I mean, Haydock a couple of weeks ago were very honest about a track bias on the going stick readings. We should have more of that open and honesty.
Final question from the Racing Forum, who have two questions. The other one is on SP, which I'll bring in with that other SP question we have next week. But he's saying, at a time when racing is under fire from various angles and when the integrity of racing is vital to its ongoing health, why does the sport still allow trainers and jockeys to have commercial relationships with bookmakers? Harry.
Crikey. Well, it's like a lot of things in horse racing. If you started it from scratch and you had infinite money, you wouldn't allow it. But that's not the position we're in. And I think that you're not going to do anything about it. I do think that I completely see, also from people coming into the sport, they might sort of go, why is that guy got a bookmaker emblazoned across his jacket as he takes that horse down? Isn't that a bit strange? There are just things that in horse racing we kind of look beyond, I think, because needs must. And I think that's really the answer. That there's, we do have an active judicial panel and a regulatory investigatory body who are supposed to make sure there isn't any skullduggery. But yeah, it's not the world's greatest look. I kind of agree.
Did that do it for this week, lads? We have ran over a small bit. We hope the discussion was worthwhile and interesting to you listening. Thank you for listening. And just all I have to say is the usual. If you're having a bet this week, do check out the AK Bets Big Prices tab. The Champions League is back from tomorrow, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. So no more of those droll Europa League Thursday nights. You'll have Champions League football on Thursday, and obviously the Premier League, NFL, and more besides. Thank you for listening. Thanks to the lads for all their contributions, and we will talk to you again around this time next week. Cheers.